Now, the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, says the state security agency is not targeting SABC executive Moshoeshoe Monare. Instead, the presidency has actually accused Monare of stalling and failing to submit all the required documents for vetting at the SABC. This comes after the city press alleged that the head of SABC News has been targeted by the SSA in what's been described as attempts at intimidation. Monare was requested by the SSA earlier this month to be vetted again and undergo a top security test, which includes taking a polygraph test. For more on vetting of government officials, I'm now joined by Roland Henwood, a political science lecturer at the University of Pretoria. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Roland. I think our starting point would be maybe perhaps let's understand why it is important to vet government officials and which officials should be vetted.
Good afternoon, thank you. Yes, the vetting issue is something that has caused a lot of controversy over time. Regulations determine that senior appointments, especially those who are involved in procurement, must undergo such a vetting. In other words, they must, before being appointed, be cleared and receive a security clearance. And the issue there is to determine if people are trustworthy, do their personal financial affairs, is it in order in such a way that they are not going to be led into temptation, essentially. And that has been a regulation that applies to all senior managers, and also not only in government, but also in the state-owned entities like Eskom, etc. Over time, that has been utilized more or less efficiently. Implementation has been a problem. And we know that, especially around the broadening of the scope, in other words, increasing the levels and the areas in which people are required to undergo these vetting procedures, there's pushback. At some stage, it was required or it was mooted that municipal level officials also undergo this vetting process. And there was strong pushback also from unions saying, but it's unnecessary, it's a costly process. People don't necessarily work in an environment where this is going to be required. And then one of the other issues was that the duration of this, it takes quite a long time because of inefficiencies, lack of capacity, not enough people, and that holds up many appointments and processes. And what we've seen in various stages of this are that people have been appointed without undergoing these vetting procedures. And some of those actually became part of what we saw happening under the state capture umbrella broadly. So the argument is that this is necessary, it is required for good governance, it is required to protect the interests of the state government, but also in that sense citizens, and in that sense it must happen. So that's very broadly the background of this.
Okay, that's the argument. What do you say? What are your thoughts around the relevance of this, and particularly at what level, in light of what you've just said in terms of some people stating that it is an unnecessary waste of expenditure? Where should it apply?
Well, it must apply in cases of sensitive appointments around national security, appointments where you work with very important high-level information. One can make a good argument for that. But I think one must be careful to make this a catch-all process because it does not guarantee the honesty of somebody. It does not guarantee the fact that somebody with a clearance is not going to abuse their position. There are a myriad of examples across the world where people with top clearances have done exactly what they were supposed to be prevented from doing. So it's not a guarantee. Does it make a difference? Probably will make a difference in some areas at some stage, but to have a system that is completely foolproof is going to be almost impossible. And I think one must be realistic. So the answer then, where do you apply this? And I think this is the difficulty if one goes specifically the position of what is happening around the SABC. I think probably the least damaging explanation of this is that the timing is abhorrent. Just before an election, just after the president expressed his problems with media in general, and specifically how the ANC is covered, and then basically telling people to go out and prevent this from happening. And at the same time, you get this process. So the best explanation is one of terrible timing and being a little bit tone deaf as to what is happening around you. And I'm not saying the president did that. It may be an official somewhere deciding this is the time to push the issue. I think it's at least very unfortunate. A different question is, should somebody in a media organization that has to represent the public interest in its broadest sense be someone that is going to be treated in this way? And what makes it difficult is you appoint somebody that comes from an environment where this is unheard of, uncalled for, and basically unacceptable. And you know that is the kind of person you appoint. So is this best practice? Is this really required? Of course, there is another argument, and that is to say that this person was informed, took the appointment, and therefore must abide by the regulations. It's also a strong argument. But we're getting into a very difficult technical debate if that is the only issues. To me, the principled question is media freedom, serving the broad interests of society. Is that something that must be limited to some kind of security process where no one knows who takes the decision, on what basis decisions are taken, and effectively can lead to a termination or serious restrictions on that person fulfilling that responsibility?
But just if I may jump in there, Roland, just for argument's sake, I mean, one could argue that you would, of course, need to vet the CEO, for instance, of the SABC, because we are dealing with a position where a person who's not properly vetted may be in a position to be corrupt and misuse information or misuse power. What do you say about that?
Well, we've had previous people appointed to that position who did exactly what you are saying, and they were vetted, one would expect. So I don't think that proves anything. Mm-hmm. I think the issue here is just before an election, having this kind of process playing out is rather unfortunate because it creates the impression that you want to control and maybe manipulate the media. And I don't know if that's the idea. I would be surprised, but that's the impression you create. And I think that's very unfortunate.
All right. And just for the clarity of our viewers, is a polygraph test a normal part of the process?
For higher level security clearances, a polygraph test will be required. But again, that's one part of a process, and it follows on fairly stringent vetting procedures that have already been completed. So yes, it is normally a part of higher level clearances.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Roland. We appreciate it very much.